Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of Outside the Studio. I'm really excited to speak with you today about a topic that I am very passionate about, which is digestive and core health. I think it goes without saying that this time of year, heading into fall and being in the midst of a pandemic, or hopefully on the downside of a pandemic, we are rethinking about our health and how we live our lives. And my hope is that we'll come out healthier and stronger and more knowledgeable about ourselves and our surroundings, and how little choices that we make impact our environment and not only our lives, but the lives around us. So, with that said, we will be exploring, diving into not just digestive and core health, but the subject of Ayurveda as it relates to yoga. And if you're not familiar with the term Ayurveda, it is a it is a practice and it is a science that is is in close relationship to yoga, in that it is meant to be practiced alongside of yoga. And it is, in essence, India's healthcare system. So, Ayurveda is not a new practice. It is very ancient, and it has its roots along with the roots of yoga about 5,000 years ago, with the ancient yogis. And it is a practice to, much like yoga's goal and aim is to become your best self, to become self actualized, to step into your true nature. The practice of Ayurveda is to view the body as a temple, as something sacred to be cared for and nourished in the best way possible, so that you can reach your fullest potential, so that you can live your best life. So the two practices of yoga and Ayurveda really go hand in hand. And Ayurveda, I think it's worth mentioning, is comprised of two Sanskrit words: Ayur meaning life, and Veda meaning the science or the study of something. So you put those two together and you kind of have this idea or practice of the science or the study of life. And so, as that relates to digestive and core health, Ayurveda is very, I think, in stark contrast to our healthcare system, a very preventative and prolific practice. Whereas when I look at our current modern day healthcare system, I think more after the fact, treating a disease or a symptom that is already there. And so when we look at Ayurveda, we think about what's upstream of that, what's causing the symptom or what's causing the disease, and how can we balance the body through various things like yoga exercises, asana, like the things that we put in our mouth, the food that we ingest, how we behave, what kind of environment we surround ourselves with. And not only does the word digestion relate to how you're literally digesting your food, what kind of nutrients you're getting from your food, but also how are you digesting the things around you, like your relationships, like your emotions, like the political situation in the world right now, the political situation in the culture that you're living in, and all the things that come with being in an environment, particles in the air quality, quality of your water. So things that you put on your skin. The skin is the largest organ in the body. So Ayurveda is very forthright about paying attention to anything that you put on your skin or next to your skin, like your clothing even, being a substance that is pure enough that you could actually ingest and eat and it wouldn't be harmful for you. So organic, natural fibers like cotton and linen. Not that you're going to eat your cotton and linen, but they're things that are not toxic to the skin. Same goes for body care, lotions, oils, soaps. So thinking about the body as a whole system, and even if you're not ingesting it through your mouth by way of eating it, how does it affect you just being on your skin? Because you're absorbing things through your skin as well. So let's dive into some of the key things I want to cover within Ayurveda as it relates to digestive and core health. Ayurveda is such a vast subject, so I'm not even going to pretend to be able to cover it all today. This is just meant to give you a glimpse into how you can maybe take away a few tips to apply to your daily life, and as a result make you feel a little bit healthier and happier because of it. So number one, the first key concept in Ayurveda is the concept of Agni, or in English, fire, and as it relates to your digestive fire. So how strong is your digestive system? When you take in a certain food, how is that processed throughout the body? Does the body process it in a way that is timely, effective, and bioavailable? So, for example, if you are eating foods that your system doesn't agree with, like really acidic foods all the time, if you have acidic based diet, which I'll go into what an acidic diet would look like versus a more alkaline diet, and I'll talk about that too. How does that affect the digestive system? How does that affect, okay, if I'm eating cereal and milk for breakfast, is that an acidic environment that I'm creating in my stomach? Is it alkaline? Is it a balance between the two? And then what happens in the digestive process? Am I absorbing the nutrients from the milk and the cereal? Or is it not bioavailable to me and it's passing through my system or eroding the lining of the gut and thereby creating all kinds of other problems like leaky gut and other sorts of chronic diseases that develop as a result of an imbalanced gut microbiome? So the idea of Agni, or digestive fire, is really important. It's one of the central underpinnings in Ayurveda, and the practices to make sure to balance the system of digestion, to not overload it with one thing or the other. You know, I think oftentimes we think, oh, this superfood like chia seeds. I'm just going to eat chia seeds. Okay, kale. I'm just going to eat kale. Well, you can have too much of a good thing. You know, we know that too much kale can cause kidney stones. It causes a buildup of calcium. So really, it's not about having just one particular monolithic way of approaching food intake, but rather finding the balance and what works for you and your own bio-individual system, so that your digestive fire, which is unique to you, is processing and absorbing the amount of nutrition that's going to help your body stay happy and healthy in the long run. And we'll talk a little bit about tips and tricks for doing that as well. So Agni, digestive fire. And then number two, which I think is, in our modern day society, we really overlook this, and I am not pointing the finger. I am guilty of it myself. But we are so on the go all the time. You know, we constantly say, oh, I'm too busy, like a badge of honor. I'm too busy to eat breakfast. I was too busy to eat lunch, so I had lunch at my desk. And then by the time I got to dinner, I was so exhausted that I just wanted to zone out in front of the TV and had dinner. I get it. I understand the pressures of living in this society. And trust me, I'm with you. I feel it myself. But there are some things around food and ritual and the ceremony of it that is unique to our human experience and important to kind of slow down enough to remember. So one of the ways that I do this, that I remind myself to slow down, because I need a constant daily reminder, not just daily, but sometimes meal to meal reminder, hey, slow down. You don't need to go so fast. You can take this time for yourself to connect to the food, to be grateful that you have the food, to taste your food, and you're going to feel so much more satisfied at the end of that meal that you're going to know when you're full, you're going to know what you ate, and you're going to feel energized and better. And guess what? As crazy as it sounds, or maybe it doesn't sound crazy, but that food's going to digest in your system so much better if you slow down, make a connection, chew each bite, and I guarantee it's going to have a lasting effect on your digestive and core health. So slowing down, one of the things I do to create ritual around food is I love tea. I have my teapot right here, and I make it an experience where tea is part of my meal. And when I start to brew that water, I watch the water boil, and then I look at the herbs. I like to use loose leaf herbs because I like to look at the herbs. There's a lot of different colors in them, the smell it emanates, and the whole science and creation of the temperature and the steeping time, and how the tea leaves kind of change color and shape as they steep. And then the second step to my ritual is to use something kind of fancy that I think I used to keep this china. This is my grandma's china from Japan. She got it for her wedding. I used to keep this in the cabinet, and it collected dust. And I mean, I felt afraid to even use it for things like Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I realized that, what was I waiting for? I can create a special ceremonial sense to each meal, each day, and remind myself to be grateful that I have this piece of my grandma, and feel connected to that. And that right there just helps me slow down and be grateful for something in the moment. So, tea, speaking of alkalizing the system and balancing out the acid, which tends to be our sadly standard American diet. Standard American diet. So balancing out that more acidic gut, bringing in some alkaline to balance the pH in the body. Tea is great for this because it's full of herbs. That's all it is. It's just herb. Herbs are very alkalizing. So I have my tea. I smell it. I look at it. I appreciate the warmth of the cup against my hand. I appreciate this beautiful little vessel that's bringing it into my mouth and nourishing my body. And then the second thing about this that I think is important to acknowledge is the temperature of the water. It's really important when you're drinking tea. And it's also very important from the lens of Ayurveda. The temperature of liquid, and actually all food that you're ingesting, has a lot to do with your digestive and core health. So the belief is that the more balanced and equanimous your system is, or let me rephrase that, the food that you're ingesting, the liquids that you're ingesting, will help to balance, keep your system in balance, the closer to your body temperature, your natural body temperature. So about 98 degrees, right, for most of us, Fahrenheit. The closer that temperature is to your body temperature, the more state of equanimity you'll continue to keep that natural gut lining in, the gut microbiome, the gut lining. And so things that are like too piping hot, we obviously already know in our mouth it burns, ouch, right? Like we can't even taste anything when we're burning. But I don't often think that we think of it in the reverse of ice, things that are often too cold, right? They give us brain freeze. So even ice water is really imbalancing for the gut microbiome and the digestive system. It's like, you can imagine, so Agni is the word for fire, right? So the belief is that this is your digestive fire. You're pouring ice water on your fire. You're turning your digestive fire off. How is your food going to break down and digest and be absorbed into your body for nutrients? You just turned your digestive system off with the ice. So we don't want to add too much flame to the fire. We don't want to add too much cold. A good rule of thumb is the temperature of the things that we're ingesting should be about body temperature. You don't have to get too scientific with that. I mean, if you want to get a little thermometer, you could and stick it in. But like if you hold a cup in your hand, if it's too hot to sip. If it's gotten way too cold, or if it's about lukewarm room temperature, that's probably about the time that it's good for you to ingest. I know that might not be so popular with some of us who like things piping hot, and trust me, I get that it's an adjustment, but it's an experiment to try. Take it or leave it. So that is ritual, my tea time. And then when it comes to food, because I've already kind of slowed down with this whole process of tea making and I've gotten my china out, I carry that into eating a meal. So my meals look like I set a nice table. Maybe I have a nice placemat that I like to look at, that I can appreciate, for an artistic value. And maybe I light a candle and I have some nice music playing in the background. I'm in a place in my home that feels light and airy and bright, if possible. And if not, I try to create that environment around me. I get creative with what I have. And so I'm always looking for ways to create an environment that is conducive of relaxation, which will affect the nervous system and thereby will affect your ability to digest your food properly. And then the final thing I do, or I try to remind myself to do, it's hard some days, right, to slow down enough, is when I'm getting ready to have my meal, I try to remember to take a few moments to place my hands over my food, because the idea, right, is, on a very basic level, that the food that we're ingesting is energy. And energy in Sanskrit is prana. So we're receiving a vibration, an energetic vibration from our food. And so I take a moment to see if I can sense that. Can I slow down enough to sensitize myself? And this might sound kind of crazy and a little woo-woo, but it's a practice of pausing to have reverence and gratitude and to make a connection to the source of life, the source of prana, that is nourishing you, that is ingesting you, that's going to feed your body in a good way. So it's a process to slow down and sensitize, really, in its basic form. So let's talk real quick about kitchery. Kitchery is a classic Ayurvedic dish that is it is a base generally of rice and mung beans, M-U-N-G, mung beans, which is similar to a lentil. It kind of looks like a lentil, and it's very round, little green shape. And it's a very traditional Indian source of high quality protein and fiber. And so this dish, kitchery, is cooked very well so that it's easy on the system to digest. So kitchery is often used during a cleanse. There's a lot of use of cleansing through the seasons in the practice of Ayurveda to remove toxins that just accumulate over time, because we live in the world that we live in. Toxins just naturally accumulate in the body. Even if you are eating healthfully and balanced, we still accumulate toxins from stresses, from particles in the air, from pollution and whatnot. So seasonally, Ayurveda recommends cleansing, removing any buildup, any plaque in the intestines, getting rid of that. And one of the best ways to do it, they suggest, is food. Food is medicine. So kitchery is one of the main staples for a cleanse. And I've got some really great recipes to share with you. Check out the show notes for some links to some of my favorite kitchery recipes. And kitchery is one of those things that you really can't do it wrong. Like, you've got your staples of your rice and your mung beans. You add any kind of vegetables you really want, any seasonings like cumin and turmeric and coriander and fennel. So good for the system and cleansing. So get creative with your spices and do a little bit of research. Look at some blogs. There's tons of stuff out there that makes it so accessible for you to make your own kitchery. All right, so moving on, I would be remiss to forget to tell you, so I'm not going to forget to tell you, I'm telling you right now, that I'm super excited to be partnering with Root Whole Body, which is a yoga studio as well as a whole body wellness facility in Portland, Oregon, that offers medicinal teas. And you just heard me talk about how much I love tea and tea time. And so they have a blend for each sort of malady, but sort of health experience you may have. And right now they're offering a discount on their medicinal teas by using the discount code TOVAR, which is my last name, T-O-V as in Victor, A-R. And you could take advantage of that off your first purchase. You'll get 15% off of any of their medicinal teas. And the one that I would suggest checking out, well, all of them I love, but they have a special blend, which I think is great for the fall season, called Digestion. And it's got all kinds of good stuff in it, like ginger and lemon peel, lemongrass, rooibos, which are all really soothing and help to repair that delicate balance of the digestive system. So definitely check that out. You can also check out any, gingers, you can buy the ginger root, just grate it. What I do, I'll make this at home, right? You can just grate a ginger root into a tea strainer and add some fresh lemon, hot water over the top of that, let it cool to about lukewarm body temperature, and then enjoy that. Does the same thing, right? But if you're lazy like me, I just like to pour my, I mean, some days I do it from scratch, but it's nice to have a packet to go to on those days where you just want to go to it. So moving on to foods that are alkaline for the body versus acid for the body, and foods that are in between in that neutral place. Look in the show notes for a link to the presentation. I will provide you with a food chart that you can print out and keep on your refrigerator or somewhere in your kitchen or wherever you want when you're thinking about food, and refer back to this conversation. So it is, we have a SAD diet, the standard American diet. And what I mean by this is not only is the acronym SAD, literally, but also if you look at the food chart after this, or you can pull it up now if you want and follow along, you'll see that the majority of the foods that we have as staples in our diet, unless you're really health conscious and really good about balancing with a lot of leafy greens and veggies, is that most of the foods we eat in our standard American diet are acid forming. And it is, I'm not saying that you should never eat acid forming foods. I'm saying let's think about how we can bring more balance into our gut and our microbiome and protect the lining of our belly and improve our digestive process, so that when we do take in these foods, these alkaline foods and these acidic foods and these neutral foods, then we can absorb the maximum amount of nutrition when we find that balance. So if you're really far in one direction or the other, you're not going to get the full spectrum of nutrition. Either way you go. Like I said before, the person who eats too much kale, that also causes a problem. So we really want to focus on finding balance in our diets. And so I'll just call out a few things and really urge you to check out the food chart at the end of this video. So acid forming foods, things like coffee, things like sugar, processed sugar in particular, things like eggs and yogurt, even things like protein, which we need, right? We need those things in our diet. And sources of protein like a meat product are particularly acidic. And most acid forming are soy products, GMO products, any artificial sweeteners. These are the ones that it's not going to kill you to have them here and there. Certainly they get slipped into food all the time, but try not to make it a staple of your daily diet experience. Try to balance it out with more alkaline foods. Alkaline foods, things like green leafy vegetables, spices like turmeric and cumin and coriander and fennel, fresh herbs like cilantro, basil, parsley, mint, things you can grow in your garden, sprouts and wheatgrass, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, very, very alkaline. One of my favorite ways to get alkaline in my system is to ingest citrus and or vinegar. So I love adding fresh squeezed lemon to my tea or to a room temperature glass of water. The quickest and easiest way for me to add alkaline into my gut microbiome. Fresh squeezed lemon, lime, any sort of citrus product. I am a huge fan of apple cider vinegar, the raw, unfiltered type that has like the little filmy stuff in the bottom that looks like somebody spit in there. Really good for the gut microbiome. And one of my favorite things to make is it's like my little health cocktail. I add one whole lemon, about a little bit less than a quarter cup of apple cider vinegar, because it makes it really hard to ingest if you add any more of that. So I think I would be a little bit on the conservative side when you're first starting to ingest apple cider vinegar. And then just the tiniest bit of raw, pure, local honey. And not a lot of honey, just a little bit, maybe a little tiny teaspoonful. Mix that into a big, huge glass of water that is not iced. It's not cold. I didn't get the water from the refrigerator. It is room temp coming out of my filtered reverse osmosis tap. And I will just sip on that. And by the end of it, my stomach is feeling like it took a shower from the inside out. It feels really good, fresh and clean. I have flushed out the acid, I have optimized my pH, and I have primed my belly for maximum digestion. So think about ways that you can start to bring in some more alkaline foods into your diet. And definitely check this food chart out. It's a great resource to have when you think about meal planning. I also want to talk about a few other Ayurvedic practices that don't necessarily have to do with food, but that also stimulate great digestion and core health. And those are the process of abhyanga, which is basically like a self-massage. And you can do it with the oil warmed, and you can do it with oil, but you can also do it dry. Like if you think about giving yourself a massage, consider just taking like your right hand and kind of stroking the belly of your forearm. And you're stroking away from the fingertips towards the torso. So you're moving the tissue and the fluid towards the vital organs of the body. And so if you have if you think about the long bones in the body, the humerus bones, the long bones of the arms, you're taking big long strokes towards the torso. And then you think about the joints of the body, rotating your hand in a circular pattern around the joints of the body. Kind of like my sister used to give me Indian burns when I was a kid. So when I do this, I kind of think about her giving me Indian burns. I don't know if maybe I'm dating myself, but so around the joints of the body, think about circular patterns of just gently rubbing the tissue to stimulate oxygenated blood flow and get your tissue lymphatic fluid moving. So that's Abhyanga. I also included a resource for a how-to video, so check that out in the show notes if you want to really dig into the proper, and I say this in quotes, because you can really just do it with your hands, and you really don't need to get super scientific about how you warm the oil. You could take a little squirt of oil and rub it between your hands, and it's going to warm up by just being in contact with your body temperature. So definitely check out Abhyanga. It's something that I love to do before I go to bed. I give my feet a little self-massage with some cold pressed organic. I like to use coconut oil, sesame oil, sunflower oil is great, olive oil is totally fine, and another favorite is jojoba oil. So if just considering that your skin is the largest organ in your body, consider that whatever you're going to put onto your body is going to be absorbed into your body, into your bloodstream. So I highly recommend choosing an oil that you would feel comfortable eating, right? So make sure it is safe and ingestible, organic and cold pressed. Stay away from seed oils. I recommend, again, coconut, sesame, and olive oil, sunflower, and jojoba. So that is Abhyanga. Second practice that I do daily in the morning, one of the first things I do in the morning is tongue scraping. And if you think about the tongue, your tongue is like a sponge. And we all know what happens to a sponge that has sat in the sink. It accumulates scum and bacteria. Well, why do you think we wake up with bad breath in the morning? We have accumulated a layer of scum and bacteria overnight. So the first thing I like to do before that gets swallowed down in my throat and ingested into my system, I scrape that sucker nice and clean. And so the idea is that when we scrape the tongue clean, our taste buds actually change, because not only do you accumulate scum overnight, but the foods that you're eating have a residue that have soaked into your tongue, which is a sponge. So you want to scrape that layer off first thing in the morning before you're eating to prime the mouth to begin the digestive process. I think I mentioned this already, but digestion begins in the mouth. So when we stimulate salivation, we help produce, again, those enzymes that are going to help break down our food and make it bioavailable for our body to feed us. It's a really important tongue scraping. You can just Google tongue scraper and find all sorts of tongue scrapers out there to add into your daily routine. They're not expensive, maybe like $12. There's all kinds of different materials. I use a copper tongue scraper. Because in Ayurveda, the belief is that copper is really good for the blood circulation, and it's also believed a little bit of copper in the system is believed to be good for aches and pains like arthritis. And then the last practice I would recommend here is oil pulling, also something I incorporate into my daily routine in the morning. So I get up, I scrape my tongue, I go downstairs, I prepare my coffee or my tea. While I'm waiting for that water to warm, I oil pull. I promise you this is not like some sort of medieval torture device. It's very simple. I just take a spoon, a small spoon. I scoop out my organic cold pressed coconut oil, and I put that in my mouth. Coconut oil is solid at room temperature, so I let it kind of dissolve in my mouth. I do not swallow the oil, because the purpose of swishing the oil in your mouth is the oil will pull out the toxins from your gums and your teeth and your tongue. So those toxins are being removed and sucked up into the molecules of the oil. And after a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe depending on how much time I have in the morning, I'll spit that into the garbage can. just like I would spit after, like you don't want to swallow mouthwash, right? So you also don't want to swallow this oil. Oil is different, right? You don't want to spit it down the sink because it can solidify and clog your pipes. So I always spit it into the garbage can. I never spit it into the sink, and I never swallow it. Oil pulling is one of those things that's kind of hard to get used to. So I started slow. I started oil pulling, swishing the oil around my mouth for about a minute. And once my mouth kind of got used to that, I would add on time. And now sometimes I forget I even have the oil in my mouth. I'm just swishing it around. And actually, I've even gotten into the car before and started to drive away before I was like, oh, I need to spit. So it gets easier with time and practice. I say that because it can be a little off-putting at first. It feels kind of weird to have this oil in your mouth. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit about movement, yoga poses in particular, that are good for stimulating great digestive and core health. And I'll talk through this. And if imagining what I'm talking about is hard to do, head to the YouTube channel and watch this at home, because I will demo as well as talk through it. So I will rotate my screen so that you can see what I'm about to do on the floor if you're watching along at home. Whoop. So I'm going to come down to the floor, and I'm going to talk about just 4 really simple exercises you could add into your day to stimulate the digestive process. You certainly don't need an hour. You certainly don't need to go put yoga pants on. You certainly don't need a yoga mat. But you might want to grab a pillow from the bed or the couch. But I'll show you and I'll talk about ways to do this without any props. So first thing is to get into a belly down position. So why? Because when we get into a belly down position, we are compressing the belly a little bit. And when we compress the belly, we produce serotonin. Serotonin is produced in the gut. About 99.9% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So it's a great practice to just lie on the belly for a little bit. And I like to add a little stimulation sometimes of a cushion. So I'll show you, and I'll talk about how I place that cushion. I place it on the soft part of my belly. And depending on how big your cushion is, like if you're using a pillow and it's like a king size pillow from your bed, your chest might get a little bit of the pillow, your pelvis might get a little bit. But I focus on the soft part of the belly, and it's okay if the pillow's in contact with other parts of the belly. And so I'll place that pillow, I'll let my soft belly rest on it, and then I'll take my hands underneath my forehead. I'll fold my hands, I'll let my elbows kind of widen out to the sides, and then I'll rest my forehead on the backs of my hands. And I'll just take a few moments there, and similar to the oil pulling, it can be a little bit jarring at first if you're not used to doing that. And depending on when you last ate, so if it feels a little bit activating, or if you feel like you have a response like nausea or any kind of pain, that's a signal to you that you should probably be paying attention to what you just ate, or how hydrated you are, or what's going on in the system to cause that kind of reaction, because it's not for no reason. So this is a feedback that we're gathering and learning about ourselves through the process of yoga and Ayurveda. That same thing you can do without a pillow. Again, you just get flat on the floor, lay face down on your belly, take your hands underneath your forehead, let your forehead rest on the backs of your hands, let your elbows relax out to the sides. And you stay there as long as feels comfortable, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes maybe.
any kind of compression to the belly is going to do this very similar work. So one of my favorites is child's pose, because in that position, the belly, if we're taking a more traditional approach, well, I don't really like that word traditional. If we're taking child's pose in the way that our knees are close together, the belly actually gets to rest on the tops of the thighs. So in child's pose, you're bending your knees, hips get to relax towards the heels, belly gets to relax towards the thighs. You can stretch your arms forward if that feels okay. And then again, you could always let the forehead rest on the backs of the hands. You can also let the forehead rest on the floor or a prop, like a pillow or a block or something along those lines. And it's up to you, again, how long you want to stay there. Sometimes if I have a tummy ache, I'll just do that for a couple minutes until I start to feel the digestive system working. So maybe my stomach starts to gurgle. I know this is a good response. I'm starting to get some blood flow and movement in the tummy, and it's doing its job. You can also flip that upside down so you can come onto your back. Basically, you're taking child's pose on your back. This is a pose that's actually called Apanasana. So hugging your knees into your chest, knees are bent. You can wrap your hands around the shins or around the knees. And you're compressing your ascending and your descending colon here. This is a great pose for elimination in waste the first thing in the morning, which is really good and vital for a healthy digestive system, eliminating first thing in the morning. So it's a great one to stimulate that process. Another thing that's great for digestion is twisting. You can check out this week's active practice where I add a lot of twisting into our practice. And you can do some more passive twisting. One of my favorite twists is just a very simple supine twist, which just means you're like lying on your back. Start out with your knees bent. Your shoulders are relaxed. Back of your head is resting. And you're just rotating your knees off to one side. So you're rotating through the torso. You might start with your knees off to the right. Again, you can decide. You can pause there for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And then switch to the second side. Be sure that when you're doing things that have two sides, you're balancing out the sides appropriately for your body. So twisting. Twisting is really great. You can think of it kind of like you're wringing out a dirty rag. When you wring out the rag, you're compressing all the vital organs of the body, and when you let that rag go, you're flushing the vital organs with fresh oxygenated blood, and that kind of works like a hose that's been unkinked to push through any plaque or anything that might be stuck in the intestine that needs to be pushed through and released. And then the final exercise that I actually incorporate into my daily practice is called Breath of Fire. So it is a breath practice, but it pumps the stomach like a bellows. So it's very stimulating for the belly. It strengthens the abdominal wall, and it's also very an energizing practice. So if you want, you could try it with me. Wherever you're sitting, you can be sitting on your chair. You don't need to move. But just take a moment to sit up nice and tall. And if you've ever tried Breath of Fire before, it's a forceful exhale, and the inhale happens automatically. So we really focus more on the exhalation. You can take the exhale through the nose or through the mouth, both work. But the focus comes on the navel or the belly wall snapping back towards the spine. And that's your exhale breath. So I like to practice it when I'm having a hard time with that, or if I'm teaching it to someone who's never done it before, by asking people to place their hand on their belly and feel that action of the belly hugging into the spine. So I will demonstrate. If you're watching, you could see it. If you're listening, you could hear it. So I'll demonstrate for like 10 breaths, and then I'll ask you to try it with me. So sitting up nice and tall, we'll take a breath in, and the forceful exhale comes for, or So through the nose or through the mouth. And if you're watching this, you can actually see my belly moving back to my spine and releasing automatically. And that's a practice that I do in the morning. I try to do it before noon because it is very stimulating and it's very energizing. And so if you do it too late at night, it can kind of hinder that sleep cycle. For me at least, I'm pretty sensitive to it. So that's worth pointing out. Anything else I want to say about breath of fire? Yes, the one last thing I would recommend is trying it maybe for 30 counts. So you could count up to 30, like 1, 2, 3, 4, how quick you're exhaling, right? Count your exhales. And then build your way up to maybe a minute of that. What I do in my practice is do 3 cycles of breath of fire for about a minute each cycle. So I either count up to 60 or I start a timer and let the timer tell me when a minute has passed. I take a little break in between each round and then I start again. So I'm not prescribing that to you. I'm just telling you what I do in my practice and what works for me. And offering it up to see if it resonates or works for you. All right. So that is the extent of what I want to talk about today with regards to digestive and core health as it relates to a parallel practice of yoga and Ayurveda. If you have any particular questions about the digestive process or about anything I said today, please feel free to shoot me a comment on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Tessa Marie Tovar. My website is tessatovar.com. And there are ways to communicate with me there. You can also leave comments on YouTube. If you're subscribing and watching on YouTube, feel free to reach out and comment there for any other digestive questions or topics that you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please stay safe, healthy, and happy this fall season. Namaste.